I secretly replaced my father's medication with water after he refused to co-sign a loan. He gasped, "Why am I not getting better?" I replied, "Sometimes karma is slow." Then the nurse found the hidden camera he installed. I grew up in St. Paul, Minnesota. My father was a retired cop, the kind of man who acted like his authority didn't end when he took off the badge. He had a way of making every conversation feel like an interrogation. "You didn't speak," you reported. After my mom died when I was 17, it was just him and me. And by just us, I mean I cooked, cleaned, and kept quiet while he drank and watched the news with his belt unbuckled. He never hit me, but his words did enough damage. I put myself through college with student loans and night shifts at a warehouse while he kept cashing his pension and pretending like he earned every breath in that house. When I turned 30, I decided to open a small auto detailing shop with a friend. We had the space, the equipment, and a list of clients ready to go. I just needed a co-signer for a loan. Not a handout, not charity, just someone to put their name on the line, so I could secure $40,000. My father refused, without even thinking. Why the hell would I risk my credit for some pipe dream? You think I worked my whole life, so you could waste it on wax and soap? I stood there in disbelief. "It's a business, Dad. I'm not asking you to pay it just to sign." He looked at me like I was a beggar. "Figure it out on your own. You're not my responsibility anymore." I left his house that night shaking with rage. This was the same man who used to buy beer by the case and lend money to his bowling buddies. But when his only son needed a chance to build something real, he turned cold. 2 months later, he collapsed on the sidewalk outside a CVS stroke. The doctors said it was mild, but he'd need physical therapy and strict medication to prevent another. And because he was stubborn and alone, guess who got the call? I moved into his house temporarily to help him recover. I told myself I was doing the right thing, being the bigger man. But every time I handed him his pills, something inside me burned. That's when the idea started. I didn't act right away. I watched, observed, memorized the schedule. Then I started replacing one of his key medications, his blood pressure pill, with water in a pill capsule. One at a time, not every day, just enough to keep his progress slow. Confusing. Aggravating. One morning, he looked up at me from his recliner, eyes sunken, breathing heavy. "Why am I not getting better?" I said it softly. "Sometimes karma is slow." He didn't understand. Not fully. Then 3 weeks later, everything changed. The nurse who came for the weekly check-in noticed something odd in the living room. A tiny light blinking from inside an air vent. She pulled it out.
"Hidden camera."
My father had installed it. He was recording me. I didn't know whether to feel fear or fury. But I knew this. The man who wouldn't lift a finger to help me had suddenly found the energy to spy on me. That's when things really started to unravel. I'm going to tell you what I did, and you can think whatever you want. I don't care anymore. I grew up in St. Paul, Minnesota. My mom was warm, soft-spoken, always cleaning up the messes my dad made, literal and emotional. She died when I was 17.
Cancer.
Fast and merciless. After she was gone, my dad stopped pretending to be anything other than what he was: cold, rigid, and obsessed with control. He was a retired cop. His entire personality was built around authority. Once he lost his badge, he replaced it with bitterness. He treated me like I was some deadbeat on his payroll instead of his son. I got through college on student loans and 2 part-time jobs. I worked the overnight shift at a shipping warehouse and tutored high school kids during the day. I never once asked him for help. Not once. Even when my car broke down and I had to walk 4 miles to work. He saw me limping to the bus stop with holes in my shoes and never offered me a ride. He said, "Build character." When I turned 30, I got the chance to finally make something for myself. A friend of mine, Jake, had just come into some money after his mom passed. He wanted to invest in an auto detailing business. I had experience and knew how to run the operation. We found a space to lease, got the permits. The only thing holding us back was the startup loan. I needed a co-signer. That's it. Not money. Just someone to sign the dotted line so the bank would approve it. I went to my father's house with the paperwork. I even brought a printout of the business plan and cash flow projections. I sat across from him at the kitchen table. I explained everything. He didn't even look at the papers. He just leaned back in his chair and said, "So, you want to gamble with my name?" I said, "No, I want to build something. I've been working my whole life for this chance."
He scoffed.
"That's your problem. Always dreaming. This is why I never helped you. You get ideas and expect the world to make room for them." That hit me harder than I expected. I wasn't asking for the world, just a signature. I told him, "You've never done a damn thing for me. Not once. This is your chance to be a father." He stood up. "I don't owe you anything." I left. I cried the whole drive back to my apartment. I didn't get the loan. Jake pulled out. I had to take a third job delivering food just to stay afloat. 2 months later, I got a call from the hospital. My dad collapsed outside a CVS. Mild stroke. Not life-threatening, but enough to slow him down. They said he'd need someone to help him for a while. No one else stepped up. No friends, no family.
Just me.
I don't know why I said yes. Maybe I still wanted to prove something. Maybe some pathetic part of me wanted him to see I was worth helping. I moved back into that cold, silent house with its old furniture and his constant Fox News blaring in the background. I cooked his meals, cleaned his bathroom, made sure he took his medications on time. He never once said thank you. About 3 weeks in, I started noticing something. He kept getting weaker. Not dramatically, just slower.
Confused. Off.
I checked his pill organizer. Everything was in place. I was the one filling it after all. That's when the idea started to form.
He didn't care about me.
He never had. But now he needed me.
He depended on me.
And I could make him feel that dependency. I ordered a pack of empty gel capsules online. I started slow. Swapped out his lisinopril with capsules filled with distilled water. Not every day. Just often enough to stall his recovery. Enough to make him doubt himself. Make him feel small. He'd sit in his recliner, rubbing his temple, asking why he felt worse than before. "Why am I not getting better?" he asked one morning, his voice thin. I looked right at him and said, "Sometimes karma is slow." He blinked like he didn't understand. Or maybe he did, and didn't want to believe it. But then the real twist came. One Friday, the home nurse, Melissa, was doing her routine check. She walked into the living room, looked around, and frowned. "Do you see that?" she said, pointing to the vent near the ceiling. I didn't at first. But then I saw it. A tiny red light. She got a chair, climbed up, and pulled out a small camera. I stood there frozen. "He's been recording everything," she said, looking at me with concern.
I didn't know what to say.
I hadn't even thought to look for cameras. It was like I was back in his house at 17 again. Being watched, judged, set up to fail. Except this time, I had secrets worth hiding. Melissa climbed down from the chair slowly, the little black camera still in her hand. "Did you know this was here?" she asked. I shook my head, trying to keep my face neutral.
No.
I didn't. She looked at me hard. Not angry, concerned. "You said he was confused lately. Did he say anything about feeling paranoid? Delusional?" I nodded. "He's been asking strange questions, thinking people are watching him." She sighed. "We'll report this to his primary. It could be early-stage dementia or something else neurological." I almost laughed. I wanted to scream, "No, he's not sick in the head. He's just a controlling old bastard who still thinks everyone owes him something." But I didn't say that. I just nodded, took the camera from her, and put it in the drawer next to his bed. After she left, I sat by the window and stared at the snow falling outside, heart thudding in my chest. That camera. How long had it been there? What had it caught? Had he seen me tampering with the pills? Had he told anyone? My mind started racing. That night, I searched the whole house. Vents, light fixtures, behind picture frames. I found 2 more. One in the kitchen and one in the hallway outside the bathroom. All wired to a tiny, old DVR stashed behind his dresser. I pulled the hard drive. I didn't know what was on it, and I didn't want to risk it. I tossed it into the fireplace and watched it burn. The next morning, he was waiting for me, propped up in his bed, eyes sharper than they had been in weeks. "You find anything interesting yesterday?" he asked. My heart stopped. "What do you mean?" He raised his eyebrows. "You're not very subtle. Melissa told me you found the vent camera." I stayed quiet. "You're snooping around, burning things. What are you hiding?" I felt my throat tighten. "You put surveillance cameras in your house. That's not normal." He shrugged. "You moved in pretty fast after the stroke. I had to be sure you weren't taking advantage of me. You think I'm stealing from you? I think you're angry. And people do stupid things when they feel owed something." There it was. The thing he couldn't help but say. The core of who he was. I felt my fingers curl into fists. "I was never trying to hurt you," I said, almost spitting the words. "I took care of you when nobody else would. You don't even know what I gave up." He tilted his head. "Then why do I feel worse?" That was the moment everything shifted. He knew. Maybe not the details, but he sensed it. The wrongness. The way his body wasn't healing the way it should have. He was testing me, laying traps. After that day, things got worse. He stopped taking pills unless I swallowed one first. He refused to eat anything I made until I tasted it in front of him. Every morning became a standoff. He installed a lock on his bedroom door, kept a phone hidden in the cushions of his chair, and called a neighbor to check in every night at 8 p.m. sharp. He turned the house into a prison, his prison, but one where I was the inmate. And then the letter came. It was from a lawyer. His lawyer. He was drawing up paperwork to give power of attorney to someone else, not me. Not even a relative. Just an old friend of his from the force. Some guy I barely remembered from when I was a kid. He was cutting me out. Quietly, legally. That's when the fear really sank in. He was building a case. Against me. Against his own son. And if that camera had caught anything before I found it, if he'd already shown someone, I couldn't sleep. I couldn't eat. Every day was a new guessing game. What did he know? What didn't he know? And when was the hammer going to drop? Then one night, around 2 a.m., I heard him fall. I ran into the living room and found him on the floor, shaking, clutching his chest. He was reaching toward his medical alert button, but he hadn't pressed it yet. He looked up at me, mouth open, trying to speak. And I stood there. I didn't move. For 10 full seconds, I just watched him. Watched the panic in his eyes. Watched him understand that I wasn't going to help him right away. Then I knelt down and pressed the button. An ambulance came. He survived. But everything was different after that. After the second incident, the hospital kept him for a week. This time, they didn't just release him with new prescriptions, they assigned a social worker to his case. I got a call 2 days later from a woman named Teresa. She wanted to schedule a home visit to evaluate the care environment. My gut told me what that really meant. He was accusing me of something. I cleaned the house top to bottom, hid anything that could look suspicious, threw out every capsule, every loose pill, every shred of evidence. When Teresa arrived, she brought a clipboard and a cool, polite smile. She asked to speak to him alone first. I waited in the kitchen, trying to breathe. After 15 minutes, she came back out and sat across from me. "I want to be honest," she said. "Your father has made some allegations. He believes he's being intentionally harmed." He had a stroke. He's confused. She didn't flinch. "Has he ever made those kinds of accusations before?" I shook my head. "He's paranoid. He installed hidden cameras." "That's actually how he claims to have gathered evidence," she said calmly. "He gave us a USB drive with partial footage from one of the cameras." I went cold. "He says the rest was destroyed. But what we have is enough to raise concerns." I wanted to ask what was on it, what it showed. But I knew better. Asking would only make me look guilty. She continued. "We're not pressing charges. But we are recommending he be moved to a long-term care facility, at least until a full psychological and medical review is completed." That should have been a relief. Getting him out of the house, out of my life. But I knew what it really meant. He was painting me as unstable, dangerous. And the state was listening. The night before he was supposed to be moved, I went into his room. He was awake, staring at the ceiling like he'd been waiting. "You win," I said.
He didn't respond.
"You've spent your whole life making sure no one could ever forget what you used to be. A cop, a father. But you were never either of those things. Just a bully with a badge." Still nothing. Just that blank, cold stare. I turned to leave, but he spoke. "You're going to lose everything." I froze. He went on, voice hoarse but clear. "I gave a copy of the footage to my friend Mike. If anything happens to me if I die, he takes it straight to the DA. He had planned it. Everything. He'd let me care for him just long enough to trap me.
He wanted me to snap.
Wanted proof that his son was the failure he always claimed. And he got it. After they moved him to the care home, things started to fall apart fast. My landlord got a visit from Adult Protective Services. My job, my last stable gig, suddenly cut my hours, pending a background review. Even some of my friends pulled away. I could see it in their eyes. They didn't know what to believe. Then Mike, his old friend, showed up at my door. He handed me a sealed envelope. Inside was a single photo, a frame pulled from the footage. It showed me at the kitchen table with a pill capsule and a syringe filled with water. One image. That was all it took. "You need to back off," Mike said. "Take this as your warning. You go near him again, you'll be dealing with more than just a lawyer." He walked away. I stood there holding the photo, realizing that my father had outplayed me, outlasted me. And somehow, even from a hospital bed, was still twisting the knife. I spent the next 6 months watching my life shrink. Words spread fast in my circles. I lost clients, then gigs. People weren't sure what I had done, but they knew enough to stay away. I couldn't prove anything. My dad's friend Mike had the original footage, and I had no way of knowing who else he'd shared it with. Meanwhile, my father was safe, comfortable. The care facility was clean and secure, paid for with his pension and benefits. He had a private room, 3 meals a day, and nurses who smiled at him like he wasn't a monster in disguise. But I knew something he didn't. His pension had a weak point, the survivor's clause. When my mom died, he never updated the beneficiary info. Her name was still listed, which meant the payments were technically flagged for review if any legal irregularities came up. Especially fraud, asset misreporting, or medical abuse claims. So I started digging. I found out Mike wasn't just his old buddy. He was also listed as his financial proxy in a side document my father never filed through official court channels. He was funneling money, small amounts, from my father's account into a shell business under his own name. Little payments, but regular. Enough to suggest theft. Enough for a case. I compiled everything. Screenshots, transfers, timestamps. I sent an anonymous packet to the Office of the Inspector General, which oversees pension fraud. Then I waited. 3 weeks later, the audit began. By the second month, payments were frozen. My father lost his care facility placement and was transferred to a state-run unit. Less comfort. Fewer visitors. No more private room. Mike? He got a visit from a federal investigator. I don't know if he was arrested, but the business account was shut down. His name was quietly removed from several property deeds in St. Paul. I didn't stop there. I called a local journalist, someone who'd once interviewed my dad years ago for a community crime prevention piece. I tipped her off to the fraud case and hinted there were deeper layers involving a decorated ex-cop and a family betrayal. She dug into it, ran a piece. Didn't use my name, but the damage was done. His old police buddies stopped coming around. His phone calls to the Forced Retirement Board went unanswered. That smug face of his, the one I'd known all my life, vanished from public view. He tried to contact me once. Sent a letter through a lawyer. It was short. "You think this makes us even?" It doesn't. I burned it without opening the second page. He spent the last few years of his life in that state home, mostly alone, the staff rotating every few months, nobody staying long enough to care. He died in early spring. Quietly.
No ceremony.
I wasn't listed in the obituary. That was fine. But I visited his grave one time. Not to make peace. Just to look at the stone and say the words I had carried in me for years. You wanted to make me feel small. You built your whole life on control. But in the end, you died under the care of strangers who didn't know your name. You lost. I walked away and never looked back.